The Forbidden Project. The steel-blue glow of Earth hung in the viewport, a fragile marble against the void. Commander Eliza Frost pressed her palm against the transparent aluminum as if to touch her homeworld one last time. For 8 generations, humanity had been contained to their solar system, permitted only limited colonial expansion to Mars and the Jovian moons. Not by physical constraints, but by decree. Final systems check complete, Commander. Lieutenant Raphael Chen's voice pulled her attention back to the bridge of the UES Pathfinder. All parameters nominal. Eliza nodded, turning to face the 6 other crew members who made up her team. Their faces reflected the same mixture of determination and apprehension she felt. They all knew what they were risking. "How long until the Council observers make their next pass?" she asked. Major Diana Okafor, head of security, consulted her display. 43 minutes. Their patrol pattern hasn't changed. Good. Eliza settled into the command chair. Then we have exactly 42 minutes to make history or be arrested for treason against the Galactic Compact. The Compact had welcomed Earth with open arms a century ago, a young species stumbling into a galaxy already divided among ancient civilizations. The Verthel, Zithrani, and Kildurian Directorate had ruled interstellar politics for millennia. Their technology was centuries beyond Earth's, their territories spanning thousands of light years. But technological sharing came with restrictions, particularly regarding propulsion. "They're watching the primary testing grounds," Dr. Vikram Kapoor said, his fingers dancing across his console as he made final adjustments to the equations that represented 5 years of forbidden research. Standard compact surveillance patterns. "They're expecting us to follow protocols." "Which is precisely why we're here instead," Eliza replied. Here was the outer boundary of the solar system, far from the designated testing zones where human ships were permitted to conduct approved experiments. The Pathfinder had officially departed on a routine geological survey of trans-Neptunian objects, a mundane mission that wouldn't attract attention. "Dr. Kapoor," Eliza said, "tell us again why we're all risking court-martial today." The physicist smiled. At 62, he was the oldest member of the crew, with gray streaking his black hair and crow's feet around his eyes. He'd spent most of his career trying to understand the Compact's FTL technology, only to repeatedly hit the same barriers. "The Compact's jump network requires massive energy expenditure," he explained. "Each gate consumes the equivalent energy of a small star to create a stable wormhole. That's why travel between systems is tightly controlled and why humanity remains effectively confined to Sol. And why the Compact's founding species maintain their dominance," Lieutenant Chen added. "Precisely." Kapoor's eyes gleamed. "But their approach is fundamentally flawed. They're trying to force a passage through space-time with brute energy. Our approach is different." On the main screen, a complex simulation appeared, a web of intersecting lines forming a multidimensional matrix. "The Compact treats space-time as uniform, requiring equal energy to penetrate at any point. But our research suggests it's more like fabric, with seams, weak points, and natural folds. We don't need to tear through reality. We just need to find the places where it's already thin. Like slipping through cracks instead of breaking down the door," Eliza said. "Yes, but not random cracks." Kapoor pointed to pulsing nodes in the simulation, specific points where space-time naturally folds back on itself, quantum resonance points that the Compact either doesn't understand or deliberately ignores. "Why would they ignore a more efficient method?" asked Chen. Major Okafor snorted. "Because efficient travel means equal access. Can't maintain galactic dominance if everyone can go anywhere." "The real question," Dr. Emily Santos, their xenobiologist, interjected, "is why they're so adamant about preventing us from even researching alternatives. The Varthal attaché practically threatened orbital bombardment when our proposal leaked." An uneasy silence fell over the bridge. That diplomatic incident had resulted in further restrictions on human scientific endeavors and the installation of permanent advisory teams, at every major research facility. 38 minutes, Commander, Okafor reminded. Eliza straightened in her chair. Begin power-up sequence. The Pathfinder hummed as energy flowed through systems that had been assembled in secret, using components smuggled from a dozen different facilities. On paper, none of this technology existed. Field generators online, reported Lieutenant Chen. Quantum resonance scanner active. Dr. Kapoor leaned forward intently. The scanner is detecting multiple fold points. Nearest viable candidate is 17,000 kilometers off our starboard bow. Take us there, helm. 1/4 thrust. The Pathfinder glided silently through the void. Beyond the viewport, nothing visibly changed. Just the endless black sea of space dotted with distant stars. But the readings on Kapoor's console flashed with increasing urgency. We're approaching the fold point, he announced. Remarkable. The quantum signature is even stronger than our models predicted. Can we get visual confirmation? Eliza asked. Nothing to see with conventional optics, Kapoor replied. But the quantum imaging system should give us something. The main screen flickered, then displayed what appeared to be a subtle distortion in space, like heat waves rising from hot asphalt, but in 3 dimensions. There it is, Kapoor whispered reverently, a natural weak point in the fabric of space-time. The compact brute force method would never detect this. How much energy to activate the fold? Eliza asked. Based on these readings, less than 5% of what a standard compact jump gate requires. The bridge crew exchanged glances. If Kapoor was right, they were about to revolutionize interstellar travel with technology that could fit on a ship the size of the Pathfinder, rather than requiring massive infrastructure. 25 minutes remaining, Commander, Okafor said. Begin the activation sequence. The Pathfinder's experimental drive core powered up, channeling energy into the specialized field generators. Unlike the thunderous power of compact drives, this system built slowly, precisely, targeting the natural weakness they detected. Energy levels at 3% of compact standard, Chen reported. Field stability holding at 97%. Dr. Kapoor's hands trembled slightly as he monitored the readings. The fold is responding. It's opening. On the screen, the distortion grew more pronounced, gradually forming what appeared to be a tunnel of twisted light. Where does it lead? Eliza asked. Based on the quantum harmonics, approximately 12 light-years from our position. That would put us near the Proxima Centauri system. That's within prohibited expansion territory, Okafor noted grimly. 15 minutes remaining, Chen reported. Eliza made her decision. Take us in. 1/4 thrust. The Pathfinder eased forward toward the shimmering distortion. As they approached, the ship began to vibrate subtly. Field harmonics fluctuating. Kapoor reported, his voice tight. This is expected. We're interacting with the fold point directly. The vibration intensified as the bow of the Pathfinder touched the edge of the distortion. Light bent around them in impossible ways, casting prismatic reflections across the bridge. Hull integrity stable, Chen reported. Drive systems nominal. 10 minutes before the Council patrol returns to visual range, Okafor warned. Half the ship had now entered the distortion. The vibrations reached a crescendo, then suddenly stopped. An eerie silence fell over the bridge. Status, Eliza demanded. We're inside the fold, Kapoor said, wonder in his voice. Transitioning between space-time coordinates. The viewports showed nothing but a swirling vortex of light and shadow, as if reality itself had dissolved around them. Transit complete in 3, 2, 1. The Pathfinder lurched forward as if released from invisible restraints. The vortex vanished, replaced by the familiar backdrop of space. But the star configurations had changed. Position, Eliza asked. Lieutenant Chen checked the navigational systems, confirming, we're in the Proxima Centauri system, 12.4 light-years from our previous position. Transit time, 8.3 seconds. A cheer erupted across the bridge. They had just accomplished what the compact had declared impossible: efficient FTL travel without massive infrastructure or stellar levels of energy consumption. But their celebration died as alarms suddenly blared throughout the ship. "Multiple contacts," Okafor shouted. "Compact vessels, at least 5, maybe more." Eliza's blood ran cold. How? They couldn't have followed us. "They didn't," Kapoor said, his face ashen as he stared at his readings. "They were waiting for us. Commander, these ships have been here for days." They knew, Eliza realized with dawning horror. They knew we'd succeed. The communication system crackled to life. A deep, resonant voice spoke, its artificial translation unable to completely mask the underlying contempt. "Human vessel Pathfinder. This is High Executor Krenver of the Compact Enforcement Division. You have violated numerous provisions of the Technological Development Treaty. Power down your systems immediately and prepare to be boarded." Before Eliza could respond, another alarm sounded. This one different, more urgent. "Massive energy spike," Chen reported. "Something's happening to our fold point." On the main screen, the shimmering distortion through which they had traveled was changing, expanding in pulsating waves. "This isn't possible," Kapoor muttered, frantically analyzing the data. "The fold should have closed behind us." "Compact vessels are powering weapons," Okafor reported. "But they're not targeting us. They're targeting the fold point." "Why would they?" Eliza began, but her question was cut short as the fold suddenly flared with blinding intensity. The communication system came alive again with the compact executor's voice, but this time there was no contempt. Only fear. "All vessels, maximum distance. Contain the breach. Contain." The transmission cut off as the fold point collapsed in on itself, then exploded outward in a silent wave of distorted spacetime. As it washed over the compact ships, they seemed to twist, their hulls bending in ways that defied physics before vanishing entirely. "What just happened?" Eliza demanded. Dr. Kapoor stared at his readings in disbelief. "The fold point, it didn't close properly. It's become unstable, creating some kind of dimensional rupture." "Can it reach Earth?" Eliza asked, her voice tight. "No. Its effects appear to be localized to this system." "But Commander," Kapoor looked up, his face grave. "I'm detecting something else coming through the rupture. Something massive." In the viewport, where the fold point had been, darkness was spreading, not just the absence of light, but something that seemed to absorb reality itself. And within that darkness, shapes were moving. "What have we done?" Eliza whispered. "The silent ruin." Silence engulfed the bridge of the Pathfinder. As the crew stared at the spreading darkness, it moved like oil through water, consuming light and matter with equal indifference. "Full sensor sweep," Eliza ordered, her voice steady despite the ice forming in her stomach. "What exactly are we looking at?" Lieutenant Chen worked his controls with practiced precision. "Sensors are having difficulty penetrating the anomaly. It's absorbing all conventional scanning frequencies." "Try quantum imaging," Dr. Kapoor suggested. "If it came through our fold, it might exist partially in the same quantum state." The main screen flickered as the ship's systems recalibrated. The darkness resolved into a more defined shape, a vast, lattice structure that seemed to fold in on itself in ways that hurt the eye to follow. "That's not a natural phenomenon," Dr. Santos said, her xenobiologist's training evident in her analytical tone. "That's a constructed object. Artificial." "Size estimate?" Eliza asked. "Assuming standard three-dimensional parameters, approximately 12 kilometers in diameter," Chen reported. "But these readings suggest portions of it exist in additional spatial dimensions. Life signs." "Nothing we can recognize as such," Santos replied, studying her own readings. "But there are energy patterns that suggest some form of organization or intelligence." The communication system suddenly crackled with a weak signal. Eliza nodded to Chen, who patched it through. The voice that emerged was distorted but recognizable as the compact executor. Repeat, do not approach the entity. This is a Class Omega containment scenario. All vessels withdraw immediately. Tow. The transmission dissolved into static. Can we get him back? Eliza asked. Chen shook his head. Signal's gone. I show no surviving compact vessels within sensor range. Dr. Kapoor had gone pale, his hands trembling slightly as he worked his console. Commander, I'm detecting quantum resonance patterns in that structure. They match certain frequencies in our drive system. It responded to our fold, Eliza realized. We didn't just travel through space. We signaled something. Commander, Major Okafor interrupted. I've accessed the executor's ship's databanks. They were broadcasting on an emergency channel, and their security protocols were compromised in the incident. What did you find? Okafor's dark eyes were troubled. The compact has encountered these entities before. They call them the Silent Ruin. They exist partially outside normal spacetime and are drawn to specific quantum frequencies, the same ones our drive uses to detect natural fold points. A cold understanding settled over the bridge. That's why they restricted the technology, Eliza said softly. Not to control us, but to protect us. To protect everyone. There's more, Okafor continued. According to these files, the compact lost 3 colony systems to these entities before implementing the technology ban. The Silent Ruin consumed everything, planets, stars, all matter converted to something else. And we just opened the door, Chen whispered. The structure continued to expand, tendrils of darkness extending outward like probing fingers. Can we close the fold? Eliza asked. Dr. Kapoor shook his head. The fold point has been fundamentally altered. It's not just a weakness in space-time anymore. It's a tear. And it's growing. Options. Eliza looked around at her crew. The compact tried conventional weapons, Okafor reported, still scanning through the stolen data. Antimatter warheads, gravity weapons, even something called dimensional shears. Nothing worked. There must be something, Eliza insisted. The compact contained them somehow, or it would have spread throughout the galaxy already. Dr. Santos, who had been unusually quiet, suddenly straightened. The quantum frequencies, she said. If these entities are drawn to specific patterns in spacetime, the ones our drive detected, then perhaps they can be repelled by opposing frequencies. Like noise-canceling technology, Chen suggested, generating an inverse wave pattern to neutralize the original sound. Exactly, Santos nodded, but on a quantum level. Dr. Kapoor was already running calculations. Theoretically possible, but we would need enormous power to generate a counter-frequency across the entire anomaly. The drive core, Eliza said. Could we reconfigure it? Yes, but... Kapoor hesitated. To generate a strong enough field, we would need to create a feedback loop in the drive system. It would destroy the Pathfinder in the process. Silence fell over the bridge again as the implications sank in. Is there any other way to get a message back to Earth? Eliza asked quietly. To warn them. Chen checked the communication systems. No, Commander. With the fold point compromise, we have no FTL communications capability. Conventional signals would take years to reach Sol. Eliza made her decision. Begin the reconfiguration. Major Okafor, download everything we have on the Silent Ruin and our drive technology to the emergency beacon. If this works, the anomaly should collapse, but the beacon might survive to be recovered eventually. And if it doesn't work? Chen asked. Then humanity gets the same warning the compact ignored from us. Eliza replied grimly. Dr. Kapoor, how long will the reconfiguration take? With the whole engineering team working. 3 hours. Eliza glanced at the view screen, where the dark structure continued its inexorable growth. Do we have that long? Kapoor ran more calculations. At its current expansion rate, yes, but barely. It will reach our position in approximately 3 hours and 20 minutes. Then we have no time to waste. The next 3 hours passed in a blur of frantic activity. While Dr. Kapoor led the engineering team in reconfiguring the drive core, the rest of the crew prepared the emergency beacon and gathered all available data on the silent ruin from the compromised compact files. What they discovered was terrifying. The entities weren't simply destructive. They were transformative, converting matter and energy into something the compact scientists called null space, a state of existence incompatible with conventional physics. Anything touched by this null space was not destroyed, but rather translated into the entity's native dimension, feeding their expansion. They're not malevolent, Dr. Santos concluded, reviewing the xenobiological analysis. They're not even aware of us in any meaningful sense. We're like bacteria to them. Their feeding is just a fundamental process of their existence. As the third hour approached, Dr. Kapoor returned to the bridge, exhaustion evident in every line of his face. "It's ready," he reported. "The drive has been reconfigured to generate an inverse quantum field. Once activated, it should create a cascade effect that will collapse the fold point and repel the silent ruin back to their dimension." "Should?" Eliza questioned. "This is beyond theoretical physics, Commander. We're operating on educated guesses and compact research that may be flawed or incomplete." On the view screen, the dark structure had grown to fill most of their field of view. Tendrils of null space reached up like grasping hands, mere kilometers from the Pathfinder. "Everyone to the escape pods," Eliza ordered. "Commander." Chen looked up in surprise. "I need one person to remain aboard to activate the drive and monitor the effect. The rest of you will take the emergency beacon and withdraw to safe distance." "With respect," Okafor countered. "The pods don't have enough propulsion to reach safe distance in time." "They have enough to give you a fighting chance," Eliza insisted. "That's more than we'll have staying here." "Then I volunteer to remain," Dr. Kapoor said quietly. Eliza shook her head. "Your knowledge is too valuable. If this fails, Earth will need your research to find another solution." "Commander," Chen began to protest, but Eliza cut him off. "This isn't a debate, Lieutenant. I'm still in command of this vessel." Her voice softened. "The mission was my responsibility. So are the consequences." In the end, they obeyed orders. As the last escape pod detached from the Pathfinder, carrying the research team and the precious emergency beacon, Eliza Frost stood alone on the bridge. The null space tendrils were now close enough that they cast strange shadows across the hull, visible through the viewport. "Activation sequence initiated," she reported to the empty bridge, maintaining protocol until the end. "Counter-frequency generation at 60% and rising." The ship vibrated as the reconfigured drive core channeled impossible amounts of energy through systems never designed for such power. Warning lights flashed across every console as structural integrity began to fail. 80%. Eliza continued, her voice steady despite the violent shaking. Counter-frequency harmonizing with fold point distortion. Through the viewport, she could see the null space tendrils reacting, curling away as if in pain or confusion. The vast structure beyond seemed to pulse, contracting slightly before expanding again with renewed force. "They sense what we're doing," Eliza realized. "They're fighting back." The drive core screamed as power levels surged beyond safe parameters. Heat filled the bridge as cooling systems failed. Eliza ignored the discomfort, focusing entirely on maintaining the counter-frequency as it reached 90% power. "Come on," she whispered to the dying ship. "Just a little more." The null space tendrils withdrew further, but the main structure continued to pulse, each expansion bringing it closer to the Pathfinder. The ship's hull groaned under the mounting pressure as reality itself seemed to warp around them. "Counter-frequency at maximum power," Eliza reported, her voice barely audible over the cacophony of failing systems. "Initiating final pulse." She pressed the activation control. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, a wave of pure energy erupted from the Pathfinder, expanding outward in a perfect sphere of blue-white light. When it reached the null space tendrils, they dissolved, unraveling like smoke in wind. The main structure of the silent ruin convulsed, its impossible geometry contracting violently. The fold point, visible now as a pulsing wound in space, began to close, drawing the entity back into the dimensional rift. Eliza watched in awe as the massive structure was pulled inexorably toward the collapsing fold. The Pathfinder, too, was being drawn in, its decimated propulsion systems unable to resist the gravitational forces. Emergency recording, she spoke clearly, activating the ship's final transmission system. Counter-frequency successful. Entity retreating. The fold point is closing, but the principle is sound. Quantum resonance technology can be safely developed if properly shielded against. The transmission cut off as the Pathfinder's power systems finally failed. In the darkness of the dying bridge, Commander Eliza Frost watched as both her ship and the silent ruin were drawn into the collapsing fold point. In her final moments, she smiled. They had found the key not just to safe FTL travel, but to defending against the entities that lurked beyond normal space. 6 months later, the emergency beacon was recovered by a routine compact patrol near Proxima Centauri. Despite their efforts to suppress the information, the data spread quickly through human intelligence networks. Within a year, Earth had developed its own version of the quantum resonance drive, one shielded against the frequencies that attracted the silent ruin. When the Compact Council demanded that humans cease their dangerous experimentation, they were met with an unexpected response. The new human ambassador presented them with complete technical specifications for the shielded drive system and offered an alliance to retrofit all existing compact technology. "We understand your fears," the ambassador said to the assembled council. "We've faced the silent ruin ourselves now. But we've also found a solution your scientists missed. We can either hide from the darkness between stars, or we can learn to safely navigate it together." The council chambers erupted in argument, but the outcome was inevitable. Humanity had proven not just their ingenuity, but their resilience in the face of cosmic horror. The ship was called Pathfinder for a reason, and Commander Eliza Frost had blazed a trail that would change the galaxy forever.